Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome everyone. It is Friday night and you are listening to Paranormal Review Radio, the only radio show without commercials and with more great paranormal talk. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm Anthony Agati in New York.
And I'm Lucy Liebfried in Chicago. Put the kids in bed and get comfy because you're about to have a Paranormal Friday night. Welcome friends, family, fellow investigators, and those who are new to the field. Do you have a question to ask us or a story to tell? Well, don't worry. You have two ways to be heard. Call into the show and be on air live by dialing 661-244-9831. Press the number 1 to get your call in the queue, or you can type your questions in the chat room. Now, Anthony and I will be referring to them during the show. And if you're listening on the archives or on YouTube, well, then make sure you get here on Friday nights live. When you're not listening to us, you can check us out on our Facebook page and YouTube channel for some cool articles, videos, show highlights, and promotions. And if that's not enough, you can always drop us a line at paranormal.review@aol.com. Okay, kids, it's time for Paranormal Review Radio.
You know, the present popular Western concepts of reincarnation are actually refinements of the ancient theory of transmigration. And this theory states that all human souls are involved in a cyclic series of rebirths in which the soul is eventually purged of evil by suffering, administered through the law of karma. In the modern Western world, reincarnation has generally been seen as a subject for anthropologists, theologians, spiritualists, hypnotists, cultural historians, and, more recently, some psychologists. The vast majority of Americans think of it as a naive fantasy of Aboriginal tribes, a supernatural belief of Hindus and Buddhists, or a minority religious belief among ancient Jews and early Christians. Polls show only a fifth, now that's just a fifth of the U.S. population is open to the idea of reincarnation, while the rest consider it outside modern science or incompatible with their religious beliefs. However you perceive reincarnation, you cannot deny its existence and the many unbelievable evidentiary cases that are ever growing. Michael Jaco served as a Navy SEAL for 24 years before becoming an independent security contractor. During his service, he achieved what many others previously thought to be impossible or unattainable. He retired in December 2002 as a Navy chief and started his own training organization, which educates participants in tactical awareness skills. But Michael has not had an ordinary life, or I should say lives. Michael has also had many reincarnations that he has become aware of and shared them in his books, The Awakening of a Warrior and The Intuitive Warrior. From Egypt to Atlantis, Michael has been part of some of the most important times in history, and he will share, hopefully, with us some of those stories he has learned. Get ready for a trip back in time by a man that can talk about it firsthand. It's going to be an unbelievable discussion tonight. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Michael Jaco to the show. Hi, Michael. Thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Hi, Anthony. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Great.
Hi, Michael. Welcome to the show.
Now, thanks a lot for inviting me. Thank you.
You know, you were a Navy SEAL for 24 years, but before we talk about the Awakening of a Warrior series, I really do have to mention your previous book, The Intuitive Warrior. Now, this book talks about how you used intuition, perception, and awareness to save not only your own life, but the lives of your fellow SEALs. I found it truly fascinating, and it made me think about this book. Has the development of your intuition and your awareness led you to begin researching your past lives?
Yeah, it definitely took me to a different level with it. I remember as a kid, having the concept that reincarnation was possible when I was watching the movie Patton. And Patton talked about how he had his past lives in the movie with George C. Scott. And that kind of intrigued me. And I think it was maybe around 10 or 11 years old when I first saw that. So I was like, oh, Patton's my hero. So if Patton says reincarnation is a possibility, then I have to accept that. So it kind of started at that point. But, yeah, definitely the intuition that I gained while a Navy SEAL and then later as a security contractor working in combat zones definitely increased my abilities to look down the timeline. I was able to look forward in the timeline by remote viewing to see attacks before they happened, and then eventually I was actually able to influence those attacks by remote influencing.
Well, how have your books and your research been received by your Navy connections? Do they accept it? And the only reason why I'm asking is because you really did gain a reputation while you were active of being able to sense when danger was imminent. And it did save lives several times.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in the SEAL teams that have developed intuition over the years. I remember when I first came into the SEAL teams, there were some Vietnam vets, and these guys had the ability to know when, like, we would set up training missions, and they just knew where the attacks, the training attacks were going to be. So eventually we had to say, okay, just let the attacks happen, But these guys were pretty renowned for having been in Vietnam and having developed extrasensory perception. And when I saw my compadres, having these abilities, I was like, well, I can have them too. So they just kind of started developing me spontaneously, some of them. And I talk about in the Intuitive Warrior where I had an experience where I had what I would call a near-death experience, where I saw my death, and then I had an experience with Archangel Michael, who came out, and I looked into his eyes, and I was like, I want to stay because I feel like I'm really helping humanity, and boom, I was back in my body, and a missile strike hit, not too far away. From that point on, I was able to actually influence the environments that I was in. It's kind of like I would send out the emotion, the feeling of love, and it would affect the environment. So that was a unique experience, and I just built on that. My comrades, started to see my abilities. Some of them didn't believe in it, but they saw that I could, predict attacks before they were happening, sometimes a week in advance, sometimes longer, and, steer all of us away from these attacks. And the reputation grew. Some people were like, I don't believe in what you're doing, and I don't know how you're doing it, but you're doing it, so I'm going to listen to you when you come up with these attacks, these ideas about attacks. So, I can accept that. That's good.
No, I found it absolutely fascinating, and it just seems so. Like when I finished this book, I actually went back and I started reading the Intuitive Warrior, and the whole thing is just so fascinating. But you know what? I want to talk about the reincarnation now. We pretty much know the clinical definition of reincarnation, but as a person who has actually received knowledge of being reincarnated, what does the word mean to you?
For me, it's I believe that we came down, we were higher dimensional beings, and we all came down into this lower dimension to experience this reality, this duality, this positive and negative. In the higher realms, there is no duality. There's no positive, negative. It's just all positive. So as we come down to experience this level and we go deeper and deeper into this duality, the negativity becomes more intense. The positive, maybe not so much. As we decide that we've had enough of this and we start to ascend back out, then we begin to experience less. But during all this time frame, we're coming in and out of incarnations, and we're experiencing. We're having these lifetimes. We're having these lifetimes with soulmates, with twin souls, with soul groups. All of these people we have lifetimes after lifetimes with.
Well, Michael, I do want to say, first off, on behalf of Lucy and I and all of our listeners, we want to thank you for your service to us and our families and our country. You are one brave and honorable man among many that we will forever be grateful for. So thank you again for everything that you have done and that you continue to do for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you very much.
This may get off the topic a little bit, but it's most prevalent in the news right now, and I promise we'll get back to reincarnation. But I know it's on the minds of a lot of people. What are your thoughts on this whole ISIS group thing, and do you agree with how the president actually wants to eradicate them, or what his process or his premise for that is?
Well, I've been involved in the military for 35 years now. I've seen a lot of different aspects of it. SEAL Team 6, I was part of the Red Men. That's the team that took down Bin Laden.
Right.
So all of this, throughout the years, I've seen all this stuff. I've worked with organizations, protected people that were gathering information for military operations as a contractor. So I've seen all this stuff. It strikes me, honestly, as a way that we're going to get into Syria and take out Assad. I think we've supplied them with weapons to fight Assad, and now they've grown into a beast, and now we're going to go after the beast, and as an excuse for going after them, we'll probably take out Assad. So we saw that with Muammar Gaddafi. The weaponry that Muammar Gaddafi had, probably most of that made it to Syria.
Right.
And as in Iraq, we left all the gear in Iraq. We just pulled out of there. It's just odd to me. But if we can look at one thing that was really good that we did when we went into Iraq, and that was we helped the Kurdish nation out. And the Kurdish nation I was just there in May, fantastic group. I mean, they have peaceful, they have peaceful religion. They for millennia, for thousands of years, they've always been peaceful with other religions. They're healthy, wealthy, wise people. So if we can say that we did something good when we went into Iraq, we can say that the Kurdish nation was taken care of. And when I was there, some of the things that I do is I can create environments that are peaceful. When I come into a negative, war-torn environment, the area that I'm in, I send out this peace, this love, energy, and it kind of influences the environment. And I did that the last time I was in Kurdistan. Of course, the Kurds are very fierce fighters, and they're protecting their homeland, but some of that energy, went out to help them. I try to do it for all of Iraq, but some things have to happen, Yeah. I can't control everything, and the Iraqi people evidently need to experience this negativity to, maybe karmic cycles or something. This reincarnation, we keep coming in to have these wars, and we're working through them. I really think that we're actually in a more peaceful environment now than we ever have been in a long, long time in our history, and we're working out of it. So there is hope. We have to take a look, like you're talking about, the Syria situation. We have to look closely at that, and we have to, ask the hard questions, not just the party line, like, hey, we're gonna go take out these, people that are chopping off heads. Well, the chopping off heads has been going on for millennia, so it's nothing new. So why do they get the focus? So that's my opinion of that.
We've talked about this topic because it's just been so prevalent in the news lately. And what was it, last week, Lucy, or the week before?
Yeah.
We were talking about the positive energies that are out there and the negative as well. But some of the things that collectively that we can do, and independently, individually, that people can do to sort of change that energy that is out there is individually, and if they could, collectively, create that positive energy. And you just mentioned that about, thinking peaceful thoughts and projecting that out. Had that always been a part of your life, or is this something that you sort of maybe just rediscovered while going through the past life and the reincarnations and learning all of that knowledge that you did? Did it sort of change your personality, or had you always been that type of person?
No, in the beginning, as a SEAL warrior, I was extremely, I still am. I have that deep physical side of me where I can pull that out. But on the surface, you look at me, I'm a peaceful warrior. But yeah, this has been with me throughout lifetimes. I've been a fierce warrior, and I was with Buddha as Ananda for 25 years. So I learned a lot of peaceful stuff from the guy. I was with a lot of the masters throughout time, and back and forth. I've been philosophers throughout time, kings, emperors, whatever. And I've been, just the pawn in the game as well. So we trade places. We do all these different things throughout time. I think throughout time I've developed these energies, and I think the Archangel Michael incident that I talked about, who is, he's the protector of warriors. He with the sword for Satan. So he influenced me. I think when he looked into my eyes and gave me that energy to be one of his warriors. We're getting kind of off topic a little bit and getting a little deep with this, but that's my feeling. Reignited some energies that I had in me from many past lives. So when I start to connect with these past lives, I'm like, I did this in another life, and then it becomes more real for me. Instead of having the anxiety and the doubt that I would normally have about using these energies, then when I connect with a past life where I see that this has been an ongoing process for me developing these abilities, then I'm like, it makes sense why I can do these. But everyone has these abilities, every single person. And your idea about, groups of people sending out information, that's one of the things that I've learned to do. When I'm in these environments that are war-torn, I connect now with the people that are having those thoughts. I can feel their energy. I don't know who they are, but I know that they're having these thoughts. So I connect my energy with theirs, and it heightens the abilities to implant that energy to keep it, a peaceful environment for a longer period of time.
Yeah, I may be getting off topic a little bit, but it has been a little strange, and I'm not sensitive at all. I don't feel as though I'm an empath or anything of that nature. But just as a regular guy, a regular Joe, I have felt for a very long time now, maybe close to a year, just the world itself globally. I felt the energy shift, and I felt it, and I know a lot of people have felt it through social media. People talk about it, and just interactions that I've had with folks. They felt that negative energy increasing more and more, and it seems to be sort of manifesting in the states that we're seeing on the news. The plane crashes and these outbreaks in war and civil unrest and everything that has been going on within the last year has been incredible. And I just started to reflect on that and sort of take a moment and say, you know what? The energy has felt weird, and it has shifted. Now, I don't know if it's a bad thing. I think it could be a good thing because look at some of the outcomes that are great that have come out of it. But I don't know if you've felt that way, if you've sort of, within the last year or so, have felt that globally the energy of the Earth and everything that we are putting out there could possibly make these shifts and these changes manifest.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The energy definitely changed. I think, everyone thought that the 2012 event was going to be some kind of, major cataclysmic event. I never thought that. I even did interviews before that, well before that, where people were asking me, is the war going to end? I'm like, no, this is going to be a shift in human consciousness. Now, when it actually happened on that date, everybody's like, well, what's different? But we're seeing it. All the stuff that we focus on now really lends, like you're talking about, lends a lot of energy to it. So we have to be careful where our thoughts go because our thoughts are much more powerful now. The energy has just gone skyrocketed, and I felt a lot of this stuff. Some things have happened to me, especially with the past life stuff. Right after 2012 happened, I was like, well, what's going to be different? I don't really feel anything myself. What happened? I thought it was going to be a big change. And I had this feeling, and I'm doing this past life research, and it's kind of dragging along. I'm like, I'm not really getting it. I don't know if I can really talk about this stuff. I don't have enough information. It's not coming through enough. And sure enough, right after 2012, I was actually in Libya, and I had this kind of like this voice in my, and I'm a visual guy. Usually I can see things like in the future, along the timeline, whatever. And I had one of the voice things, and I rarely get. I think I had one before my past my whole life. So this voice came through and said, "You were Richard III," and I'm like, "Richard III." So I looked up Richard III, and it was horrible. I mean, Shakespeare did a number on the guy. As I learned later, as I'm doing the research, Shakespeare was part of the Tudors. Basically, when they deposed or killed Richard III, they had to make him look bad, and this is something that happens throughout time. So I was like, wow, that's interesting, but I really don't see myself as Richard III. It's kind of like not my thread, because I can see my thread throughout time, and it's very easy to spot. So I kind of dismissed it, and then I was like, I got another little thought of looking castles. So I'm a big castle guy. I've built castles throughout time, as I've found out. So I looked at castles of Richard III. I was like, oh, those are cool, and I kind of kept dismissing it. So I get home, and I live in Sedona. Sedona is a very, very powerful place spiritually.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of vortexes and stuff like that. My wife, who's my soulmate, had set up a little meditation room, and we were changing it into a workout room. So I was setting up a treadmill, and the place where she had actually built a vortex that I didn't realize, I kind of felt every one of Richard III's wounds, body wounds, that he was the last king to die in battle. So I felt all the puncture wounds like they were actually happening. It was horrible.
Wow.
So I fell down on the ground. I'm like feeling them. It was 12 of them. I think they have 11 that they actually can see in his skeletal structure. The next day, I was like, okay, I'm Richard III, I get it, and then the pain stopped. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, I'm Richard III. So I started looking at Richard III. The next day, they announced that they found Richard III's body, his skeletal remains that had been missing since the date of the battle. So these kind of things, when that happened to me, I'm like, wow, that is crazy. So then all these lifetimes as king started coming through, and I'm not just random. I was Richard III. I back this up with research, and I actually go through psychics and stuff like this. One of the psychics I use is Kevin Ryerson. And Kevin Ryerson is the guy that's worked with a lot of high-level people. Shirley's done a lot of her books have Kevin Ryerson's information in it. So I go through him. So I contacted him, whenever I have a bunch of past lives I want to, check out. So anyway, ever since I was a little kid, I'm having these thoughts that I was kings of England, but I was like, who am I? I'm just a I'm nobody. I'm just a poor Southern kid, And so then when that life came through, then a flood of lives as kings came through, and I did the research on them, and it has my thread in them. I can see my twin souls in it, my soulmates, my soul group. They're all in there. So it was fascinating, So once I had that trauma, I let that trauma go. And part of the trauma was because Richard III, they'd done such a hatchet job on the guy. So I think probably throughout time, I would maybe have an idea of that lifetime, and I looked at it like I did in this life. I'm like, oh, that's horrible. I don't want to know that, So once I had the body, I had the trauma from the wounds. And that's a theme that happens throughout a lot of past life regressions. Like there's Dr. Weiss, who's written several books about past life regression. He's a past life regression, obviously, and he talks about how he would take people back in the beginning when in his practice. He was, taking people back in what he thought in this life to overcome trauma that they had, so they can come. Like this one woman, I think she had neck problems, and doctors couldn't figure it out, and medication or exercise or nothing could fix this woman's, neck problems. So he regressed her, thinking he was taking her back somewhere in her childhood where she had maybe sustained an injury that she didn't remember. Ended up, she went back into another past life where she was hung, and once she connected with that, then the pain went away. And I've had past life connections like that, Civil War generals that I had connected with, and injuries that I had in this life went away once I made the connections with their battle wounds. So it's pretty cool to connect with past lives like that, releasing trauma, releasing pent up energies and memories like we're talking about. I think past life information is very influential for people and can really open some doors as far as like knowing themselves, overcoming trauma that they might have in this life, knowing about their significant others or people within their life. Like all my kids, my wife, like I said, friends, people that I'm meeting now, soulmates, twin souls, just all these different things. It's phenomenal.
Well, you've got some amazing stories of your past lives that we're hopefully going to get into. But first, I think what's really interesting to me, and maybe to some of our listeners, is that first moment or that first time when you recollected a previous past life. What was that process like? I mean, what were you feeling? What were you doing? What was going through your mind at that moment that, hey, you know what? I've actually lived a previous life, whatever it was. I mean, I couldn't fathom that. I couldn't put that into words what that experience would be like.
It's a humbling experience. When it happens to you, you're like, you realize there's more to you than just this life, and it's very empowering actually once you get hold of it. It's taken me years to come to initially in my first memory of a past life. I went to this one woman in Virginia Beach, and I'd been doing the research. I'd read so many books, and I was in my 30s. I went to this woman named Mary Roach in Virginia Beach, and she was recommended by the Edgar Cayce Institute there in Virginia Beach, who was also big into past life reading people.
Right.
So he, I actually doing volunteer work for reincarnation. I was fascinated by it, and I wanted to know more about it. So one of the people that worked there said, go to the Mary Roach, and you might not be able to get into her because she's usually booked up for 3 months. Well, it just so happened that I was getting ready to leave. I was getting out of the military and out of the Navy SEAL teams and going to start my own business. And so I called her up, and I was like, okay, I'll just give it a shot. So I called her up, and she's like, well, I actually had an opening this Saturday. Somebody just canceled just now. So I was like, I'll take it. So I went and talked to her, and she told me about a past life, all these past lives, and when you start to hear them from someone that's, a very accomplished psychic, and a psychic, that does past lives, they have the ability to, tune in, kind of like a radio, to your frequency, and your frequency has a code that opens up a doorway pretty much to all your past lives. And I've been slowly figuring out this radio tunage on my own, but a psychic can do it. They train themselves to do it for anybody. So she started just rattling off, oh, you were this and this, and these were all lifetimes that I had been connected with, like Egypt and Rome and being with some of the masters and stuff like that. So when she started rattling these things off and telling me about all these how I performed and what I did in these past lives, I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. This is so striking true for me. But it actually give me a name of a person. So it took me a couple more years, doing my own research. Eventually, I got to the point I'd had an experience where I went to the battle where the Battle of Gettysburg was. And when I went to the point where they call it the highest mark of the Confederate nation. So when I reached that point, it's called the angle. Had this almost like out of body experience. I'm like, I can see myself rising above the battlefield and looking down. I could see the battle going on, the smoke and the yelling, the screaming, the shooting, the blood, everything. And I was like. And then, boom, I'm back in my body because I hear my kids screaming, yelling. They're running around with the stones and stuff, the mines. Right. So as I went back in my body, I was like, whoa, that was weird. So that was like, okay, who was I? So it took me several years to find out, that was Louis Armistead, that had led that charge, the last general all the way up to the end. So he was wounded. He was wounded in his knee, his left knee. In my left knee, I had my kneecap shattered. In his shoulder, in both shoulders, or both arms, and I had shoulder problems. After I had that connection, once I figured out that lifetime through some help from two different people that had no idea about any of my ideas or connections or anything, and then I made the connection, all these problems in my body went away. So. Amazing things happen when you do that. Very, very great releases. it's just awe-inspiring. And then once you get one, you're like, okay, I want to know them all. So it's been many years. I mean, it's a long process. I mean, you think about a lifetime, and you're tapping into another lifetime. That's a whole lifetime. And I've done like over 100 now. I have found over 100 lives, not only for myself, but for my twin soul group, and all these other people. So I mean, you start to connect the thread of what you do in your lives, what your kind of like your vision, what your goal in these incarnations is, and what your group is doing. It's easy to pick out your past lives.
Well, I mean, you talk about awe-inspiring. One of the areas that I just had to read over and over and over again because I guess in my mind it couldn't click. You actually have either served or been acquainted with both Jesus and Buddha. Now, the idea of being with either is astonishing and practically a mind-blowing experience, but to have been at the side of both must have practically pushed you into another dimension. I mean, literally. Can you tell us about this experience? And did you, this may sound a little funny or crazy, did you persuade either one to see the other's point of view?
Jesus actually went and studied in Tibet. Excuse me. And this was before I met him. I was a Roman centurion in the time with Jesus. But Jesus had many incarnations. I was a king. I believe it's pronounced Vishtasa, and I helped Zoroaster. Zoroaster was an incarnation of Jesus. So Zoroaster, started this one religion way back, in 1000, BC. So these things go back more and more. Abraham, I was with Abraham. So you start to see this thread. So with Abraham, I was King Gerar, and one of the kings of Abraham. So he had 7 kings. One of my twin souls is the soul of Muhammad. So Muhammad was one of Abraham's kings. So Muhammad I've found several Muhammad's lives. Muhammad was actually also Akbar the Great. So you start to see this thread. You find it in yourself, you see it in other people. But influencing Jesus, no. He was the influencer. He was a mighty soul. Obviously, he had developed himself. It was basically his last incarnation, and he was, ascending after that. He was in my soul group. He and his soulmate Mary Magdalene. So he influenced me greatly, and I would come back as Constantine the Great to, bring Christianity into Rome to make that the state religion. So I have this thing that I do with, learning with the masters, and then bringing that religion that they were, bringing to people. And anchoring it in. So as Zoroaster, I came in, as I talk about this in the book, as Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great brought in Zoroastrianism. So if we look at another incarnation, Buddha, when I was with Buddha said that you're going to ascend or you're going to be 7 kings of India. And I became Ashoka the Great. And Ashoka the Great brought in Buddhism into India. Conquered all of India and brought in Buddhism. So I have this pattern of coming in and bringing in these helping bring in these different religions. My twin soul group, my soul group, we do these things. So yeah, it's fascinating once you start to connect with this stuff.
I mean, you know what? The list of your past lives, to me, was absolutely mind-blowing. And in the book, you do mention that, if you have a particular interest in a certain period of history or maybe a name, myself, I am totally obsessed with Tudor England, and in particular, Elizabeth I. And I did note Sir Walter Raleigh on your list of names for the second book of the series, and not to mention Giovanni and Lorenzo de Medici. That's
right.
Another obsession of mine, Italy in the 1400s. Now, since you have discovered so many lifetimes, did one period of history interest you more than any other?
Well, it's actually changed over time. once I started to make the connections, at first it was like I was extremely fascinated with Egypt, and then I visited Egypt, and when I was in Egypt, this is another thing that will happen to you as you start to go into these lives. You will come to a place where you have past lives, and you will know that you've been there, and you will know that you've had lives there. So when I was in Egypt, I just had this knowing. I was like, I've been here, and the people that I was with, I was in a spiritual group, and everybody was like, you were, priests and pharaohs here, I can see you. So it's kind of cool to get the confirmation from people that are, I thought, were more advanced than I was at the time. So when I started doing the research, and I was Senuseret, a king very like Alexander the Great, who is one of my twin souls. So Alexander the Great would come back and do basically the same thing that Senuseret did. Senuseret conquer almost a vast area that I had conquered as that king. Little known king. A lot of the Egyptian pharaohs, kings are not well known. There's a lot of information on them. History has kind of forgotten them over time. But so once I made that connection, I was like, okay, that's fascinating. And then I looked at Rome and Greece and started making all the connections with those areas, over time. And once I got, and same with you, Elizabeth I is one of my twin souls that I've met in this. I'll just call her Kat. That's all she wants to be known as right now. But she was Elizabeth I, and so if you're having these strong connections, and you invited me to those, is very great chance that you and I have had past lives together. So that's something you start to look at. You have people that influence you greatly in life. Places you go. If you have a strong attraction for that, look at that a little bit closer. Look harder at it, and think along the lines of, maybe I've had past lives there. Just think of that possibility. You might not believe in past lives right now, but just think of that as a possibility, and then maybe some things will start to come to you. You can't deny it. That's the way I was. I was like, past lives, yeah, I believe in it. But as far as like me having a past life, I don't know. Maybe I did, and if I did, maybe it's just some simple guy I'll never find out about, and then I find out I'm king. Pharaoh. Yeah, it's crazy. Will everybody find that out? Yeah, maybe. Maybe you're like me. I've had past lives where I'm just the guy in one of Patton's tank commanders and got blown up, in World War I. And that's another thing that I talk about where I had this fascination as a little boy. 4 or 5 years old. You have these fascinations with things, and I always play with toy soldiers, and I loved tanks. So my mom at the time, we had a state fair, and she took me over to where the National Guard had a tank, and you could look at the tank, but you couldn't touch the tank or get in it. So my mom, very attractive woman at the time, she kind of persuaded the guy that was standing guard there to let me kind of sneak in the back and go up in the tank. So I'm like, here I am. I'm going to fulfill my dream. I'm going to be in a tank. So I start to move, and I can't go there. I can't get in the tank. He look at me like, what's wrong with you? And I've never been in a tank to this day. When I found out that I had died in a tank in World War I, and one of Patton's tanks, I was like, oh, of course, okay, I can get in the tank now. The same thing happened to me as I was a Tuskegee Airman. This is another thing you'll find in your past lives. You don't stay like I'm Caucasian. It's like I've been black, I've been Asian, I've been Indian, I've been everything. You move around and you experience all these different cultures, all these different races. That's way like this. It's great. We can do all these things. So as a Tuskegee Airman, as a young black lieutenant, I died in World War II in a battle protecting bombers that were going into Germany to bomb a factory. And it was the first use of German jets. So I got, in between the plane and the bomber that I was supposed to protect, and I got shot out of the air. I couldn't get out of the cockpit because when they had these like 20-millimeter cannons on these jets that were very powerful. Normally you just get a few rounds in you, but it blew my propeller off, and I have memories of the propeller coming back, hitting my cockpit, and trapping me in it. I couldn't open it to get out and bail out. So I remember crashing into the ocean and leaving my body. And when after and I'd had all these dreams all my life about crashing in planes all my life. I'd had these dreams of crashing into water, in fact. So once I had that experience and I realized that's what it was, as a Navy SEAL, jumping out of planes all the time, you'd think, yeah, this guy can go up into the cockpit. I could not go into the cockpit. Everybody got to go to the cockpit. They look in the cockpit and I'm like, well, that looks pretty cool, but I'm not going up there. I don't know what it is, but I'm not going there. So after I had this past life connection, I had a tour. We did one of the president's planes one day, and I went up into the cockpit, and it was great. It's no big deal. I'd even like to learn to fly, again. But yeah, it's fascinating when you start to make the connections. It releases so much, and you start to discover more of who you are and more. I know history better now than I've always been a history buff. I had always excelled in history in school and high school and college and stuff. But for me to learn, about being in these lives, it just opened up history just so much more to me. And I see the pattern throughout time, like we're talking about the Syria thing. You can see these patterns throughout time that keep repeating until we learn. So when we learn, when we have these connections, like I'm talking about with my past lives, it releases this energy. So when we find why we keep doing these things throughout time, these wars, this karmic, cycle that keeps going on and on and on. When we make the connection and we say, that's enough, I realize why we do this, and then it's done, it's gone. So that's another reason why it's very important, I think, to, discover past lives. Very helpful.
It's release. It's a release of those things, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it sets up an energy like we keep talking about. Once you make the connection with why these wars are going on, who's doing these? We always talk. All of us talk about the Bays. The Bays are basically oligarchs that are controlling the world. They've been doing it for eons. That's the way civilizations are built. You need that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Now we talked about the Medici. The Medici came in and had the great money from the banking industry, which I started. And then Lorenzo Medici funded the Renaissance, basically jump-started, civilization again. And had Michelangelo there, had Leonardo there. One of the guys I'm working with right now, Michael Tomlinson, just found out that he was Leonardo da Vinci in a past life. So all these things start to make these connections, and it's just amazing. It's just okay. I see why we keep doing these things, and we can empower ourselves by making the connection. We can stop the process.
Well, you know what? It's really interesting that you mentioned connections with places. The first time I ever went to New Orleans, I've always believed in the past life thing, but the first time I went to New Orleans, I knew New Orleans. I knew the French Quarter. I knew everything. I go into St. Louis Cathedral, and this is my church. To this day, I refer to it as my church. I know I had a past life there. I walk in there, I start crying like I come home. It's amazing when you find these places or times that just speak to you, and you may not know why, but it has happened in my own life. But I want to talk about the list of names. Some of the names on your list contain some really, really well-known figures in history, and they're in vastly different regions of the world. They're different cultures. Mm-hmm. Are there any parts of history that you saw that are recorded differently than what they actually happened?
Oh, yeah. Lots. History is changed quite often, like we were just talking about Richard III. History's often changed to benefit the new rulers. So we could just go back throughout time. Just look at all kinds of stuff and see things. I talk about some of that in my book. We can look at Justinian the Great and Theodora. Theodora was my wife as Justinian, and Belisarius, who was our general, was the life of my twin soul Hercules, and also Patton. So that's a connection that keeps coming through. Great general in that time, never defeated in battle. So we were able to reconquer all all the Roman Empire that had been lost. So Justinian and his wife Theodora were basically, after their deaths, of course, long after their deaths, she was, made out to be a prostitute, and he was, he was a bad, the people hated him. Just all these things just happened throughout time. So that's one thing that happens, the denigration of someone's character. But there's also things where, for instance, in my book I talk about Thermopylae. We have this vision of Thermopylae in the 300 there. I was at Thermopylae, and in fact I gave a very good account of a battle that happened there that's not known to history right now. I think that we will find the remnants of this battle at some time. Remember how they talk about how King Leonidas in 300, and of course there were several thousand allies that were there as well. But they talk about how they held up Xerxes' army for several days, and Xerxes was the history says that Xerxes was just waiting. Why would Xerxes wait? He's got a 1,000,000-man army. He just plows through whatever he wants. He was waiting for a group of the immortals to go around the pass. He already knew where the pass was, so he sent them around. When they didn't come around from behind like he had planned, because a phalanx, basically you have to have several groups of men, 6 to 7 deep, pushing on the shield wall to keep the shield wall intact. Otherwise, it can break down fairly easily. So we didn't have that many men. So an attack from behind by 1,000 immortals who were their best guys would have crumbled the pass defense. So I had the intuition in that life that they were going to do that. So I talk about in the book how I went up with a force. King Leonidas at that time was my cousin. So I went up in my twin souls, my twin soul B, who is Kat's husband in this life. So I met both of them. That was pretty interesting. So I went up with a group. We ambushed the 1,000 immortals, like I talk about in the book, and annihilated them, so that they obviously didn't make it, and no one knew that they didn't make it, and so they're waiting for several days, and then they start the battle. So we held them for a couple of days. Eventually, they sent another group around, and then we knew they were coming. So I left, and I went to get his wife. He wanted me to go back and get his wife, Gorgo. So I went back and got Gorgo, who is actually my soulmate. And in this life, in that life, she was King Leonidas' queen. So this is another thing we do. We move around and we share. We do these things that we need to do to, as the group, as a larger group, we help the group, advance. So I went back and saved her and her son, and because Athens came under attack very quickly after that, and took them back to Sparta. So I told the story about, them, being attacked and stuff like that. So as Pausanias, I came back again and defeated the army that was left behind by Xerxes, and in a land battle, and I talk about that in the book as well. So you start to see these patterns. You get these connections. I'd always had a connection with that battle, the 300. It's just fantastic. But that's one of the things in history that's just not there. It's not there yet. But now that we're talking about it, somebody's going to do research eventually. If it's not, I'll go there and find it. And they're going to find where that battle was, and history's going to come out. It's the same thing with, like we just talked about, Richard III. It's kind of like it was time for Richard III to come out because I was making these connections. I strongly believe that. And when I made the connection with Richard III, they were actually looking for his body for two months in his parking lot in Britain, around the time frame where I'm getting your Richard III. Your Richard III, hey, we want Richard III's body to come out now, so figure it out, dude. Come on, connect with it. So once I made the connection, it happened. And then when I started to find these other lives, other things started happening within, consciousness as well. So, we're talking about these energies, and that definitely makes an impact. So Alfred the Great, I found out, back in November of 2012, I think it was, that I was Alfred the Great. So I'm running going down the list and finding these kings' lives. It's taken a while, but I finally make the connection. Just a week or two later, a scientist was like, we got some bones down in this storage room down in this museum. Let's take a look at those. And sure enough, there's Alfred the Great. So it's been long lost. So once I made the connection, they found his bones. So it's kind of interesting. So we're talking about these energies. As we unravel some of these pent-up energies within ourselves, it actually affects the environment. And the same thing is happening within the world. So we're seeing a lot of energy that's coming in right now. We're connecting with it, and we're seeing the negativity everywhere. We're looking at it, and we're overcoming it. So, yes, we're going to see a lot of negativity, but we are overcoming it.
Well, I heard you speak, in an interview about the patterns, and you've mentioned it now. You actually have an interesting theory on Pope Francis and the patterns in his life. Can you briefly tell us about that?
Absolutely. Francis of Assisi. So Francis of Assisi, he's like, I grew up with him in that lifetime. He's a partier, young guys, we're partiers. But he was an aggressive guy. Most of us during that time frame, a lot of kids, wanted to become, knights and go off and fight in wars and stuff like that in the Crusades. He was gung-ho about that, but he never made it. He suited up and he got kind of like, a change of consciousness, and he went back and didn't make it to the Crusades. So his life basically he started going into like poverty, giving up everything, giving up worldly possessions, lots of prayer. Amazing guy. In that lifetime, I was Angelo Tancredi, and I went to the Fourth Crusade. I was actually in every one of the Crusades, and I think the reason why I do these things. There's one thing, like in the Battle of Thermopylae, like we were just talking about. I stopped barbarism from overcoming civilization. I'm there at those points throughout history, and I'm also there when these groups are out of control. So, and I also am there when groups are going to go into battle, and I kind of calm the energy like I have in this life, like I've talked about. So I've been doing that throughout time. So in a previous life, I had this feeling that Francis was Matthew with Jesus. You start to make these connections, you start to feel these things out, and I had that confirmed. And then I had it confirmed that not only was he Matthew, but he is the current Pope. Francis, Pope Francis. How about that? So he didn't want to do it for a long time because there was a lot of corruption in the Catholic Church. He's been unearthing a lot of corruption. The popes used to live in unparalleled splendor. He's taken a room that's like very, very I wouldn't say severe by any standard, but it's just a small room compared to the palatial accommodations they had before. There was a time when he was Francis of Assisi where he hugged someone that had, and there was just recently, I think in the last year or two, where it showed him some gentleman had some rare form of skin disease, and it was covering his body, and it showed him hugging this man. So it's kind of like you start to see these, we bring these patterns back over and over again. He is probably, I don't know yet if he's in my soul group, possibly because of these connections throughout time like that I found. There's these three that I can look at it very carefully, and probably much more if I put focus on it. But that's another way we can see these threads throughout time with Jesus. And then he comes back as Francis of Assisi, and he has these. He has the marks, where the crucifixion marks on his body in the last couple of years of his life, and it got so severe in the last year of his life that he had to be carried everywhere because the bones were actually coming out of his feet. So extreme, devotion. I remember actually one time where he was praying, and he told us never to come around when he was praying at night because he didn't want us around. So, of course, I had to go see. And I remember going in one time where he was praying, and I saw an angelic form where he was communicating with an angelic form, and they both looked at me. And it's like, whoa, sorry, I remember running away. But, that kind of spooked me. But now I see how amazing that soul was, and probably the things that he's brought in. And it's kind of interesting because he was a bouncer in Argentina, I believe, and I was a bouncer. So you start to see these similarities between yourself and other people that you've had lives with, and that's kind of random. Anybody could be bouncer, but if I look at his life more, I could probably start to pick out a lot more stuff like that we have similarities. So another thing you start to look at, with your soul group or your twin souls or whatever, you start to see the patterns that you have shared throughout time. And I've had the amazing chance to meet a couple of my twin souls, just recently. They picked up my book, The Intuitive Warrior. They read it, and they're like, "Oh, we got to connect with this guy." And I've had actually a couple people like that over my soul group or twin souls. So we send out these kind of like these energies, and people that we've had lives with start to pick up on them, and they get back to us and they connect with us. And then eventually we get to the point where I'm talking with them, and I sent them a whole list of all my lives, and they're like, "God, this guy is crazy." They had no idea about reincarnation. So I actually wrote an article with Kathy, and it's on my website, michaeljaco.com. So she talked about how she thought I was crazy, and she didn't want to have anything more to do with me, and it kind of like started to creep up on her, and then she looked at it again, and then bam, this woman has found almost 100 lives herself. It's just amazing. And that's the way my wife has been. My wife has been a little resistant, and but once I started, but supportive, completely supportive, and she's supported me in a lot of crazy stuff I've done over the years. I think that's that's one of the great things that soul mates do for you. They pressure because that's how we grow. You don't just sit around the Garden of Eden and eat grapes. You got to go out and learn. So she presses my buttons. Of course, I press hers too. But we have these fantastic, loving moments. So it makes up for all that. But she has come along with this information a little bit slower. She's in a different realm. She studies other things. She's a very spiritual person. But now she's really connecting with the past lives. I think because one of the main reasons because I connected with my twin souls, and they're just like going gangbusters on these past lives, and so she's starting to get hooked on it that way too. So it's rewarding to see the people around you, connect with it and make these amazing connections. They're fabulous. I can't say enough about them. I mean, we could talk, for the rest of the night, and we could go on with these stories. It's great.
Well, Michael, you mentioned, and you've mentioned it throughout the interview, the term twin souls. I have no idea what that means. Could you explain briefly what a twin soul is?
Absolutely, great question. Okay, so going a little deep with this stuff, Shirley MacLaine talks about this in her book, The Camino. She talks about how she was in Atlantis, and I remember these lifetimes. I was actually a priest who was going through this process. She went through a process as a Lemurian where she split her soul. Her soul became male and female, and that's one of the processes that I think all of us have gone through. That's what a soul mate is. Twin souls, I think there are a lot of people, and I'm one of them, thought the twin soul and soulmate were basically the same thing. As I've learned, a twin soul is, as we incarnate into Earth, as we're birthed into Earth, we come in twin soul groups. Now, these twin soul groups can be anywhere from 6 to 12 souls at a time. It's kind of like the birth mother just, comes out, okay, there's 6 more. There's 8, there's 12. And then you work together throughout time as, usually with your twin soul group. Twin souls are basically like if you had a brother, a sister, that's the same thing as a twin. So twin souls are, of the same, birth mother. They're of the same lineage. They come in and they work together throughout time. So a soul group is basically a large, other soul groups that come together and work together throughout time, have this, passion about whatever they're doing, however they're learning, however they work together to help each other. Soul groups can be, anywhere from, 50 to, 100 or more. So soul groups are interesting. Like I was saying that, a couple people that were in my soul group were Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene, she didn't ascend at the time that Jesus did, so we could, our soul mate can actually, one side of us can ascend earlier. So I just saw, what was she? She was the woman in the Civil War that went around and helped all the wounded veterans. What's her name? Florence Nightingale.
Florence
so that
Nightingale,
was so that's when you hear that. Some people go, oh, of course, but that's interesting once you start to make these connections throughout time. You're like, oh yeah, I could see Mary Magdalene being, the wife being the Florence Nightingale helping people. So yeah, so we continue to do these until we work through our karma, through things that we need to work through. People that we were working with, and maybe she stayed because she was helping other people in the soul group, and that's part of the process too.
Going through the process that you have in the discoveries that in the knowledge and the history and the memories that you've been able to go through and to experience, is there any advice that you may be able to give our listeners or people out there that are interested in learning about their past lives but may not have the opportunity to go seek someone out for that assistance? Is there anything that anybody can do maybe on their own to maybe create a more open-mindedness, or if there's a meditation process that may help them start that process or start walking down that road?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question. Yeah. Meditations, you can find meditations like Dr. Weiss has, there's several people out there that have meditations that back. I've done Dr. Weiss's meditations where it's a guided meditation, a CD or probably a download now, where he takes you, and I saw my King of England in this meditation, so he takes you on these meditations. It's, whatever it is, $10, $15, whatever, so it's reasonable. It's a great intro for someone interested. Of course, there's a phenomenal amount of books out there, from very, very scientific to really out there. I would say mine's kind of like maybe a little bit out. I just laid it out there, but there's Dr. Weiss. There's also another gentleman named Michael Newton that has a lot of books that I highly recommend that are ready to go to the different level with it. And he talks about life between lives. Now, the life between lives, or heaven as we would think of it, is pretty much what we're experiencing here, only no negativity. And you have far more power. And you can do things that we can't do here, fly, move around different ways. You see more colors, musical instruments are just phenomenal, all these things. So, many people have talked about these. People talk about, that one, I think a bestseller just recently was this young boy that had died and gone to heaven on a surgery, and he came back and he started to tell his family about it. So, there's many books out there like this that talk about the other side. So I've had a past life regression where I went to the other side. I was said, okay, go to the point where you're about to incarnate, and what do you see? So it was the time before the Tuskegee Airmen, and I saw Patton there as well. So and I was thinking about this show when I was thinking about this a couple of days ago, and I hadn't done the research on it. And I was like, Pat was there when I was doing this thing. So our idea was we're going to come in as, I was going to come in as a black man and help overcome racism. And Patton was going to be a general, and he was going to overcome racism on his end. So I never really looked into it until just a couple of days ago. So I pulled it up, and sure enough, Patton had his own tank battalion that was all black, because black couldn't integrate with whites at the time. And they did an amazing job. They had, just like the Tuskegee Airmen. So he let them have that. So I remember, we on the other side, we come up with these plans of what we're going to do when we come in, and it's fascinating information. So Michael Newton basically talks, vividly about this. He goes into that's about all he does in his books. He talks about how on the other side you find out he's finding out from these people that come and see him. They regress them into the actual life between the lives, and they have so much more information there. Just kind of like what I was just shared with you, but it's so much detail. I haven't had, other than a brief glimpse of it, I haven't done a Michael Newton type of past life regression into the life between lives. I would love to do that. So, but like we're talking, it takes time, takes money, takes you have to find these people, and when the time's right, then I will do it. So.
Well,
so meditation, is a great. I'm sorry, meditation is a great way to do it in the beginning. Reading the books, and some psychics are only like. It might be a lot of money for some people, but $100 will get you 45 minutes to an hour, and some are probably even less than that. So it's kind of like what I did with Mary Roach. I think she was maybe about that much. She didn't give me a lifetime, but she gave me a peripheral, view of my lives, and that kind of impacted me quick.
Well,
so I would do the research for it before you do somebody. Just don't jump into it. Get disappointed.
In the West here, we don't really believe in reincarnation, and it has mainly been an Eastern belief. Why do you think that's the case?
And this is good that you bring this up, because over time we have to take things to a certain level so things don't get out of hand. And in fact, as Justinian the Great, I brought in some rules that we would get away from reincarnation, because reincarnation causing a lot of problems, and problems to the point where tens of thousands of people are dying, fighting about this idea. So what do? You just kind of like, we're going to take that away from you kids, so you can't kill each other anymore. So that's kind of what happened. So for hundreds of years, the Christian religion has gotten away from reincarnation. So it's kind of, I don't want to, it got dumbed down, but it basically got changed so the environment could handle because we were going down in consciousness. As we go down in consciousness, we handle the higher levels of information, the spiritual, connections that we have when we're at, higher levels. So it kind of had to be, taken away from the kids so they would stop killing each other. I think the time is, as former incarnations of Justinian, I'm ready to bring this information back in. So I think it's ready. I think more and more people are, like we were just talking about there's been several instances of kids that have had memories of, I think there was one where this young man, little boy, had memories of being a pilot, a World War II pilot, was shot down by a Japanese Zero. He kept, probably I've seen that. So the accident, he made all these connections. He found the name of the guy that he was. They went to Japan, where I guess he was the area where he was shot down. I think even maybe the Japanese the guy that shot him down was still alive or something. It was crazy. So major connections like that. So as more and more people are intrigued by that, they're going to start to look at it more. And as you start to look at it, you're going to go, what if? And as you go past this, you go, wow, yes, I see that I've had these past lives. So I believe that everyone that's incarnated now at this point has past lives. And some of us have had many past lives. Some of us are still a little new on the soul, development. But I think everyone has had many lives.
Well, Michael, on your website, you state that you have a strong desire to inform humanity that we're far more than the life we're leading. What message would you like to give to us?
that the connection with lives will inform people more than they can just looking at their current life. I mean, I was the same way. I looked at my current life. I'm like, why do I do the things I do? I was really into psychology. I read all these psychology books. Dr. Wayne Dyer, who is one of my twin souls. So all these different books. Deepak Chopra. I mean, just on and on and on. Eckhart Tolle. Why do I do the things I do? When I started making the connection with the past lives, it informed me more than anything else that I've ever studied or ever, put any energy into. So the energy that I've put into my past lives has come to me in unbelievable amounts of greatness. Like the injuries that I've had, the abilities that I've had, having the self-assurance, some of the things that I was seeing that I could do, but why could I do them? Why was I able to, send out these energies and change environments? And I got to the point where, I was like, okay, I'm doing it, but why? So I started connecting with these past lives, and I could see, where I was doing it in past lives. So, yeah, I would say that everyone can benefit from, the research of past lives. It's very rewarding on many, many different levels, not only for yourself, but also when you connect with past lives of other people around you. You start to understand them even more. Like my wife, it's fantastic. It's beautiful to know that, she's been my wife in, countless eons of time. Just amazing. And we've been together. It just makes our life more special now.
Well, that's a soulmate. That's a true definition of a soulmate.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, fabulous.
Well, Michael, your story is so amazing, and it's so intense that a show like ours cannot truly do it justice. Where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your amazing books?
You can go to my website, like we talked about, michaeljaco.com. My web designer is about ready to roll out more information and have the other book, my new book, The Awakening of a Warrior, put in there. I plan on doing more of these talks, and more people are coming forward wanting to talk. So I'm bringing more of this information. But definitely the two books. It's interesting that the Awakening of a Warrior, and then you went to the Intuitive Warrior. Most people do it the other way. So you got the fire hose, and then you went and got the little hose.
Kind of how I work.
I like it too. Just give it all to me now.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your insight with us. We're truly better for knowing and learning from you. So for everyone listening, please pick up Michael's book, The Awakening of a Warrior, and The Intuitive Warrior, and check out his website, michaeljaco.com. Thank you again, Michael. We wish
you the best
in all you do.
Yeah,
that was
thank
fabulous,
you, Michael.
Fabulous show. Great questions. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Good night.
All right. Good night. Okay, so in preparation for this show, which I have to say thank you, first of all, thank you, Michael, for coming on. But in preparation for the show, I always like to do the two sides of everything. I'm always the prosecutor and the defense attorney in everything that we do. But so I went online and I tried to look for, not just for his story, per se. I went in just to do research on reincarnation and past lives, and I typed in, just to do a regular Google search, and typed in proof that reincarnation does not exist. And I guarantee if you do that right now and go into Google and type that in, you're not going to find much information for proof that it doesn't exist. Now, obviously, you can't prove that it exists, or you can't prove that it doesn't exist. But I challenge people out there to come back with proof that reincarnation doesn't exist. And I don't want to see, in the Bible it says this, or in the Quran it says this. I don't want a religious tone to it, because technically nobody can even prove the Bible. So you can't use something that hasn't been proven to prove something else. And I don't want the excuse, well, it's just ludicrous. There's no proof that it does exist, so obviously it doesn't exist. That's a ludicrous statement. I challenge people to research and look out there to find out what proof is out there that it does not exist. Now, we've heard tonight from Michael. We did a previous show on this, I think it was like 2 years ago, on past lives and reincarnation. And I've done a ton of research, and I've watched a ton of documentaries. Even they just had that new movie out just recently. I can't even remember the name of it, Lucy. Something Heaven.
Heaven is for real.
Heaven is for real, that's it. Where, and it's based on a true story where this little boy was reincarnated, he was the grandfather, basically. And it was a true story, and I read up on that story, and Shanti is another little girl, I believe in India, very famous story about her past life and how she remembered everything as a little girl of her previous life, and actually visited the town that she was previously lived in, and met, I believe, the husband that she was married to, and I believe she had died in childbirth. So then she met her son. I may be getting stories confused, but I know Shanti, Shanti, is another famous story. But there's loads of these stories, and Michael was talking about too the airman who was fighting Japan at the time. And yes, I remember seeing that documentary, and they went out to the area where his plane was shot down, and they went in the water. They went on the big boat and threw a wreath in there. I remember seeing that documentary, and it was amazing. This kid knew everything. He was drawing pictures when he was a young child of the actual airplane that he flew, and told stories about what he did, what he looked like, what he was seeing out the cockpit. I mean, for a 2-year-old and 3-year-old boy, it just doesn't happen. If you know for sure that they're not around anything like that, and his parents claim that he was not. And so it's kind of strange and eerie to hear these types of stories. Now, I'm sure people are going to think tonight Michael's story is probably wacko. He may not be telling the truth. He may be fibbing, or he may be delusional in the idea that he lived these lives, and they may or may not be true. I don't know. I'm not the person to judge someone else's experience and their story. There's no way for me to prove it or disprove it, unless he's saying things that are wrong, and I don't have the knowledge and the history information of what he was talking about. But if I'm interested, I'll go and I'll Google search and look it up and find out if anything that he was saying was wrong. But I just find it comforting and I guess a sense of ease and peace in the way that he's living his life, and creating that positive energy, and especially in his career path, being a Navy SEAL. I'm sure he was probably looked at with sort of one eye closed and one eye opened, and that strange smirk on people's faces for talking about these things and having that personality and that attitude on the battlefield, in combat, whatever situation he was in. But he himself, and we didn't get into it tonight, but he himself has said that this other side, this spiritual side of him, helped him through all of these things and helped change other lives from the regions that he was in, the native regions and the native people from those lands. He helped those people as well. So regardless if his story is true or false, I think that the guy is a damn good guy, and he has led his life to live in peace and to profess peace and give out that positive energy. So whether he's crazy or not, I'm not going to judge that. But what I can do is judge his actions, and his actions, I think, are meritable.
Well, that's what, I read the book, and I read, the stories of the past lives. But what really, really intrigued me about him was, like you're saying, I went back into The Intuitive Warrior, his first book, and his the way he describes and talks about the intuition, the developing that, and the things that did get him through being in war, being a Navy SEAL, which is probably one of the toughest things on the face of the earth. He was a SEAL for 24 years. I mean, this is, to me, the fascinating part. I'm trying to connect his intuition and his connection with the awareness and the energies to the past lives. I mean, I've always believed in reincarnation. I've always believed in past lives. I know I've been here before. His stories are very, very, they're very hard to believe, you know, when you're reading all this. And I did notice in chat, you know, how do you know this and stuff like that? Again, you don't know somebody else's truth. To them, that is their truth. And like you said, whether or not, you know, there's no way we can prove it, you know. But there is something about him that really does intrigue me. And his energy and the sense of who he is really comes across in his books. And I like it. I like, you know, who he is. I am very impressed with this person. I'm impressed with his connection to energy and the things that can be done, because I truly believe these things can be done. I believe that our intentions and the things that we think can change the energy around us. You know, so I for one, his stories, while I don't know all of the facts and I can't prove anything, they really do strike a good chord with me.
You know, we've always said that, I mean, I've always said, and I'm sure you agree with me, Lucy, that, you know, we've gone on investigations at haunted locations and some supposed haunted locations, well-known haunted locations, whatever it is. And we've come back with what we claim to be evidence of the supernatural, of the spiritual realm, whether they be audio clips or video clips, whatever it is. But the one thing that I've always said is that, you know, it's not the motto of everyone else or for a lot of other people, but it's my motto. And I don't do things, or I don't present things in order to prove to others whether it's true or false. I present it as a base for, here's what I have experienced, and here's what I believe to be of supernatural or paranormal, and I put it out there. Everyone else will have an opinion about it, and, you know, 50% will bash it and 50% will believe it. And that's everyone's prerogative. Everyone can do that. That's what life is all about. You know, everyone has a mind of their own, and I'm certainly not one to make someone else's decision or persuade someone. I present it, and if you believe it, great. If you don't, great. It's not up to me, and I don't change the way that I live because you may believe it or you may not believe it. I just present it out there because if it does help someone, then I'll feel better about myself, or if that whatever I presented makes people think and may help them get into the field a little bit more, or solidify their already beliefs that it does not exist, then great. Then I've done that for someone. But I think that may be presented, or maybe the presentation of a lot of folks, not many, but I think a lot of folks, and I think that may be from Michael as well, that, you know, here is his books, the 2 books that he's written, and here's what he believes to be the truth of what he has experienced in past lives, and he's correlated those stories. I agree with Noah that it's kind of strange and odd that many of his experiences and stories were of high priority or high level or more prominent people within history. And it also makes you think of the question, well, you know, what about the other people that have said that they were, you know, Richard III or were Buddha or whoever, you know? Everybody cannot be Michael Jackson, you know? We all can't be the one person, or maybe we can be. Maybe we're all reliving lives. You know, I've read articles just earlier this week, and I can't remember who. I have to find it in my browser history. That we can live past lives and future lives, and we can, as odd and strange as that may sound, we can keep going back and forth, and our souls are not linked to a single earthly bound body that we just bounce around, and there's no time, obviously, outside of space and time. There's no time, so there's nothing that can be measured. So you can be anywhere and anything. So I could live somebody's life, Abraham Lincoln, say, and I've lived that life, learned the lesson, and moved on, and I'm either in this current life or a future life, and then somebody else can actually live in Abraham Lincoln's life and learn from that life about something. I don't know a whole hell of a lot about reincarnation and past lives, and that's what this topic tonight is really interesting, because it's I don't know if I'm saying the right word, but sort of convoluted. It's sort of murky, and it's not. The lines are not defined, and I have a hard time trying to explain, how that web weaves within just the topic of reincarnation. So I'm interested in this, and I'm open-minded to accept all stories and all theories in regards to it. And the only way that I'm going to learn is to talk to people like Michael and find out things and make up my own mind. I have question marks over some of the things that Michael says. But I think if I push those question marks aside, there may be some truths in there that can lend itself to answer either things within reincarnation or other things within the supernatural and paranormal realm.
Well, no, I agree with you totally. I mean, this subject, like I said, I've always believed in it. I know there are things, that we experience and that we feel. And, like I said, going to a place, New Orleans, I can't explain how I know everything about the French Quarter, but I do. As far as his stories go, I can't say that they're true. I can't say that they're not true. But I do appreciate the fact that he's putting it out there. I mean, it's what he believes, and how I learn is by listening. It's listening to other people. I don't agree. I don't agree with everything that I hear, and the same thing, like you said. We go investigating. We present our evidence. We're not presenting our evidence as, here is solid proof that this is, the other side. It is our experience, and we're simply sharing it. Whether people agree with it or not, it's going to happen. Someone else's experience investigating may be totally different than what we come across. The equipment that we use, there's the ongoing debate, orbs versus dust. Some people like the spirit box. Some people don't. There are so many different views and concepts. And there, like you said, there are no set lines. So when it comes to reincarnation, it's not a Western belief. So we really don't have anything to base it on. We can go back in history. We can look at this. We can look at the East. But it's still a matter of gathering everything together and coming to a conclusion within yourself. And I think that's what the belief in reincarnation is going to be for quite a while. There's no set definition that can be proven. We have the children that are remembering past lives. We have experiences. There's so many different experiences. All we can do is take each one, listen to them, and form your own opinion. That's what I've done with this. And as I said, I agree with a lot of the things that he says about, having these things come to you. But as far as his experiences, I can't say yes, they're true, and I can't say no. But I am grateful to hear them. And that, I think, is part of the learning process, is listening to other people's experiences, not to judge them, but to listen to them.
Well, obviously, for the show, we always go into heavy research. I know you just recently this week had a past life regression or a past life reading, and I did a self-guided hypnosis that I can talk about. But briefly, if you want to talk about what you learned and how you received your knowledge of a past life and what was interesting about it.
Well, okay, you know how Michael talked about, going to a psychic, some people that are in tune to that. I just happened to turn on a show this week, and it is Barbara DeLong is the name of the psychic. She's well known. I don't know her personally, but she does past life readings. And along with her on the show is another psychic, and his name is Nick Fox. He's from Australia. I don't know either one of these people. I didn't give them any information, just gave them my name. And Barbara just went full force. And from what I got to her, I wrote a summary of it. It's on my Facebook page if you want to read all the details. But just to give you a brief, what I got, I had lived in the 1400s or in France. My family was of noble birth. In the time marriages were arranged, my father had arranged a marriage for me. I went through the whole thing, got to the altar, and said, "No way, I'm not doing this." I left. I walked out of the church. My father pretty much was ready to kill me. It took a few years for that to die down. They arranged another marriage, went through the whole thing again, got to the altar, and said, "No, I cannot do this. This man's not going to take my virginity." The family arranged a third marriage, but this time it didn't even go to the church. They just sat me down and said, "Hey, are you going to do this?" I said, "Nope, not going to do it." In turn, I was sent to a nunnery, okay? I always had avoided court life. I enjoyed reading. I enjoyed study. So for me, going to the nunnery was excellent. It was wonderful. I was able to learn. I was able to increase my knowledge. And then around my 40th year in that life, I decided there's got to be more to life than what this is. I packed up my things in the middle of the night and just left, started walking towards the sea. Now, she pointed out that I have a great connection to water, which in this life is really, really true. I am so connected to water. I need to be near a body of water somehow. Right now, I live right next to a river. I've always lived. I will travel to work. I will purposely take Lakeshore Drive so I can see the lake every morning. I have to be near water. She said, I got to a town which is right on the water, finally met a man that I fell in love with, excuse me, and I married him. Didn't have any children in that lifetime, but what was more important to me, even though I could have had a very comfortable life, I could have had titles, I could have had land, what was more important to me was the connection, the spiritual connection between me and this man. And that's kind of like how my life has been now. It's never been about the money. It's never been about what the other person has. In relationships, I've always looked for that spiritual connection. She also went to another life, which was in Greenland way, way, way back before it was cold. She talked about, I had many children in this life, but I also had the ability for telepathy and astral travel, which that's another one of my fascinations right now is astral travel. I want to be able to do it. Well, Nick came up with he talked about astral travel, and I never mentioned this to either one of them, how I have learned, I'm studying, but I'm trying too hard, which is another facet that it's a pattern that happens in this life. I try too hard. I try so hard that sometimes I overshoot what I'm trying to do. So I found it really interesting that here I have two psychics that were able to pick up past lives for me, and there were a lot of patterns in those lives that I can really, truly see happening in this current lifetime.
Well, when you had first mentioned about this reading and living in France and being back there, I had mentioned to you, well, what about your connection with New Orleans and the French Quarter? And so, it sort of makes a little bit of sense that you've always been fascinated with New Orleans and that life, and you mentioned it just tonight about talking about the church. It's your church. You felt home. And, maybe it had to do with the history of the land and the immigrants that were there and, so on and so forth. But
the other thing that's really funny about it, too, in high school, I actually took 3 years of Spanish, but I moved heaven and hell to be able to take French. And don't ask me why I didn't need an extra language, but I took French. I mean, there's so many little things that are adding up now.
Well, I think we were all forced to take either Spanish or French, right?
But I took them both. I didn't have to.
It was interesting, hearing your story about that. And I had done, just on a whim, I went onto YouTube and just looked up past life regression meditations or hypnosis. And I actually posted it on our Facebook page, the one that the video that I guess meditated to or regressed to, and it was a guided meditation. So the male voice on there guided you into a relaxation mode, and all of that stuff. I'm sort of into that lately. I don't know why. Just listening to relaxation things. I guess it's the stress from work, but after relaxing the body and getting the breathing technique that they were guiding you to do, I felt very calm and very peaceful, and it started to guide me to a past life. And as I was going through it, I was conscious of the video of my eyes were closed, but I was conscious of the volume that was coming out of my laptop. I was conscious of not so much conscious of the space that I was in my living room, but I was conscious of being aware, and which is kind of weird. And at the same time, visually, as he's guiding me through it, visually seeing these things. And the regress life, I found out that through this visual journey, I was in a previous life in Mexico, which is kind of funny because you're a Mexican. You were not on my mind at the time. And it had said, the guided meditation actually had me above Earth, and then slowly going down onto Earth and finding the land that I was connecting to. And I can actually find it on the map right now on Google, and it was on the upper west, near the upper west coast of Mexico. If I go to it now, I can find the name. It's a weird name. I can't remember it right now. And my body had sort of descended down onto this land, and I found myself in a deserted area. There were mountains in the background, and land almost like desert-like, almost. Very little vegetation or agriculture around. There was a little bit, but it wasn't a lot. I wasn't in deep forest area. A lot of tan sand and tan dirt I saw a lot of. I don't know if this is what that area looks like at all. But I had come down into this little shack of a home, and I remember it was white outside, a red roof, very dilapidated, very run down. I don't think I was fully clothed. And what he had guided me down to was being a child at that moment. And so I had visualized my parents. There were no other siblings around. And very tiny house. I mean, literally, it's probably like the size of my bedroom was the whole entire house. And visualized my parents there, visualized eating at a table, very old wooden table, eating there. I don't even know what we were eating. There was a little tiny fireplace, and there was one bed in the corner, and a window, and then some other wooden bench. Nothing material, no materialistic things at all in there. Very crude. And so then it progressed me into later in life. And I had learned through that transgression that my parents had died when I was very young. And I couldn't have been more than maybe 9 or 10 years old. And I was left to fend for myself. So I had lived in this home alone since I was a very young boy, and had to go out and find my food and do everything. And at the point when I sort of transgressed into an older gentleman, I lived a very old age because it made me go to a mirror and look at my face. Very tanned, very wrinkled, white hair. Just that visual of it, I can still remember it. I remember not seeing a shirt on me at all. Very skinny, almost, bones, almost very weird. But anyway, then it made me go to a calendar. It made me look at a calendar. And I had a hard time looking at the calendar for some reason, but 1800s popped in in the month of June. So I don't know, if that was just my own visualizing, my own purposely visualizing it because I was having a hard time seeing it, or if it actually was that time period. But it didn't say when I died or how I died or anything like that, but I remembered feeling very angry, very alone, very miserable, a grumpy man. And it brought me out of it, brought me up above the earth and then back into my body, and it had me not wake up, but open my eyes. And after that, I started to sort of go through it, and I remembered it right off the bat. I remembered everything of it. And I started to see if I can correlate any of those characteristics in my life now. And it was pretty strange because I guess you can call me a loner. I'm that person that, it's kind of odd because my day job, I'm so public and so out in front. I'm like the leader of everything and have to be in front of hundreds of people all the time. But when I come home, I retreat like into a cave. And I find solace in that, and I find happiness in that, and I like it. And I guess it's comforting and familiar to me. And so I correlated the idea of me being alone for so long that it felt comforting enough. I've always fended for myself. I've always done things for myself. No one has really, truly ever helped me do anything financially, whatever. No one. And I've never accepted any help from anyone. That's just my personality. But it was interesting. And, I sort of lost touch with, one of my parents at an earlier age, and, no communication at all or whatever. But it was interesting to see the correlation to that. Now, I can also take the opposite side of it and say, well, naturally you would think of things like that. If you're told to think and visualize of something that, quote unquote, was a past life, you are relating your personality, your experiences right now in this life into this visual aspect, and maybe creating just a character out of it. And so I don't know whether or not I forcefully created that person in Mexico, or was it my past life? I don't know. And here I go again trying to, argue both points to it. But it was a little bit interesting, and it was kind of funny that it was in Mexico.
Well, my family is from that area in Mexico. They are from the Northwest, where you described. And what you describe as the land, that's exactly what it is like. It is truly like that. I've been there. I have pictures of it. I got to show you.
I'm going to Google it. Yeah, keep talking. I'm going to see if I can Google the map of it and try and find the name. Go ahead.
The land that you're talking about is exactly like that. The landscape is like that. It's just interesting to see the patterns, and I do agree what you're saying. It's possible you hear this and then you try to equate it to something in your life. But with my reading, I just thought it was kind of interesting that the story that I was given really does make sense. I mean, things in my personality and things that I am interested in and mean something to me really did have a pattern that was the same as what these people gave me. So now I'm very interested. I'd like to do that, the meditation, to see where it takes me. You know, it's interesting that he mentioned Gettysburg. You know, I've told you about how I feel about Gettysburg. I mean, there's a connection too. And there's, in one particular, one of the monuments there, it has to do with the Irish Brigade. And that particular monument evoked such emotion in me and such sadness for the loss that happened there. But yet I've got no connection to Ireland. I mean, I have a tattoo, a Celtic knot on my arm. Don't ask me why. I've never understood why I got it. But I do know when I saw this Celtic knot, I had to have it. I had to get this tattoo. So I really truly believe, I'm beginning to believe that patterns that we can find in our past life, in these regressions, I'm beginning to think that there is some merit to that. You know, that things that happen to us now, maybe the way we are, our personalities, there's got to be some kind of connection to where we've been. And I really do want to move further with this because there's just so many wonderful questions that have opened up. So, I don't know. I have more questions now, as usual, about the subject than when we started. And that happens every single time. But that's the beauty of what we do. It opens up more doors. It opens up more questions. Did you find the spot?
No, and I can't remember because I'm on Yahoo Maps right now, and it's not bringing up this area. But I know it's above, and forgive me for desecrating this name. It's above Navojoa, Navojoa, near Rosario, Queriego, but it was a different name, and I can't remember it. It's somewhere in here, and for some reason Yahoo Maps is not giving this area. So I'm gonna look. I'll tell you later, Lucy. I'll look on Google Maps has it or something, but I don't know. You know, it was a fun experiment to do. It was very relaxing. So if anything, I was able to relax my body before going to sleep that night. I didn't have any dreams later on or anything like that, but I thought it was interesting. Whether it's true or not, I have no clue. And I don't think, who knows? I don't think we'll ever know the truth to whether or not past lives exist. I think there's a lot of science that is involved in this, and I know scientists are talking about it. I even just read an article just recently about biocentrism. I think that's what it's called. How some scientist who studies biocentrism is able to prove that reincarnation exists, but I only read it for a short period and did not do my due diligence with it. So, you know, maybe that's an area to research in, biocentrism, and figure out whether or not, you know, science can proclaim that reincarnation exists. I don't know, you know, the philosophy that I have lately is that I really don't think that we just live this one life and that is it. We go into the ground and it's dark forever. Obviously I don't, and I know, Lucy, you don't, because we believe in the spiritual realm. We believe in spirits. So obviously there is some sort of form of life after death. What that is exactly, I have no clue. But to tap into the idea of reincarnation in past lives, and the stories that I have read, some have been truly shocking that I have no idea how the hell they know these things, especially the young children's stories. And some of the research that I have done into the science part of it, it lends itself to be, you know, discussed a little bit more in depth and I don't want to keep repeating myself all the time. But I really do think that there is something to reincarnation and past life. Put religion aside and put the idea of proving something aside. I think it's really interesting to discuss and read up on, and base your own philosophy on what you believe. What is truly your belief in that portion of the supernatural or the paranormal.
One thing that I did get, and I just thought about it now when you were just saying it, Barbara had said to me, because she went a little bit more into like my soul and stuff like that. She said that my soul was very, very happy to be in this place and this time. And I thought about it. I have said that I'm so excited to be alive right now. And that just struck me. It's like, wait a minute, this is something. It's more than just a coincidence that she would say something like that. And it's also it's just so weird that I've said this more than once. I am very excited to be alive right now with all the things that we're learning and all the things that are coming forth in this time. I'm very excited. She specifically said, my soul is very, very happy to be in this time. So I truly believe in reincarnation. I don't know all the ifs and whats and hows. And you know what? That's okay. I'm okay with it. I'm not the science person. I go more on the things that I know. And again, I don't know how I know these things, but they just come to me. But this definitely is a subject that I don't want to stop. I'm going to keep looking into it, and I want to find out more. And hopefully the show can open up a door for someone else who's listening to maybe look into it. I mean, it is a mystery, but that's what makes life so exciting, are the mysteries and trying to find the answers.
Kayeme. I think I'm saying that right. K-A-J... Kayeme? Sorry, C-A-J-E-M-E. That's the name of the town that stood out for me when I was trying to search on the maps right after I had come to. I don't know if it is or not, but that was what had come out when I searched on Google Maps. So, all right. So we've done reincarnation. We've discussed it before previously on the show that we did 2 years ago. Tonight we talked to Michael Jaco and his experiences, which I thought it was pretty interesting just to talk to him because of the idea that he was a Navy SEAL and he had gone through all of these, high profile and name dropping lives. That I thought it was just interesting to bring him on and talk about it and discuss it. I mean, one of the things that I had to read over and over again was the idea of being alongside Jesus at one point and then being alongside Buddha. And I don't know exactly what had happened during those lives, but learning from them, talking with them, whatever it is. And the only question that came up was, did you try and persuade either one of them about their beliefs, or did you try and convince anything? Who knows? I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. Whether or not it's true, I have no clue. I have no idea. But it was an interesting story to talk about, and I hope it was interesting to you guys as well. All right, so Lucy, we've got about 6 minutes left to the show. Do you want to get into the fan of the week?
Let's go to the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. And this week, it is a new listener. She sent us a really wonderful note on our Facebook show page. It goes like this. I just discovered your podcast a few weeks ago, and I cannot get enough. Your open and researching approach to every subject paranormal is, to say, at least refreshing. Thank you, Anthony and Lucy. A new fan, Krista. So our Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week this week is Krista Anderson of Kansas City, Missouri. Krista, she likes chip coffee, she likes Halloween, Steve DeShavia of the Dead Files, she likes The Walking Dead, and of course she likes Paranormal Review Radio. Congratulations, Krista. Thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you for being a fan.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Lucy, but I think she even messaged and said, I think it was in our invite, that she was actually going to get her husband to listen along with her tonight. So hopefully they're listening tonight. Congratulations, Krista Anderson of Kansas City, Missouri. Don't forget, if you want to be a Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week, you don't have to do anything. All you got to do is just like us on Facebook, maybe like us and subscribe on YouTube. That's all you have to do, Paranormal Review Radio.
Well, you know what? There are so many things we don't understand in life, why we do the things we do, why something or someone or some place seems so familiar, or even why we choose to follow a certain career path. Why do we know some people from the moment that we first meet them? Why do certain patterns happen in our lives? Well, maybe it's because we've been here before. Reincarnation may be a mystery to us now, but as we become more aware and look at the things in our lives that seem so familiar but so different, we'll find the answers that are within our souls. Whether you believe in past lives or not, it is an idea that is worth looking into, and you may be very surprised at who you really are or were. Now, we do want to thank Michael for joining us tonight and sharing his story with us. It is truly an amazing experience. But it's time to revisit one of our favorite topics again, shadow people. They lurk in obscurity, looming human figures blacker than darkness. Millions across the globe see them. The unfortunate feel their touch, and some awake to the horror in their red, unblinking stare. Join us next week as we talk to Jason Alford, the author of Darkness Walks, The Shadow People Among Us. Jason has interviewed dozens of eyewitnesses, and he shines some light on the world of the shadow people, viewing these beings through the lens of science, religion, and metaphysics. Are they ghosts, demons, hallucinations, or are they something else entirely? Join us next week and find out. Thank you, everyone, for spending another Friday night with us. You guys rock. Thank you, Anthony, for another great show. So, until next week, Starseeds, keep remembering and have a paranormal week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio.